Welcome back to the Cactus Pit Podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Drinks. Alongside me, as always, is...
Ryan the Bearded Bastard.
Boom. And today's guest is Nic the Tequila Wanderer. Appreciate you coming on, homie.
Hello, Nic.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
I'm excited. This place is sweet.
Thank you.
Great setup.
It's all him.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, he was asking how long you had the spot, and I was like, 2 years? I don't know.
About 2 years. Moved in June of 21 during the COVID crisis. Came available, and we secured it for 5 years.
Okay, cool.
That's cool.
Nice. All right, so I know you brought some tequila, so what are we sipping on today?
Oh, man. So that was one of the tougher decisions I've had to make this weekend is, what should bring over. Yeah, so, you and I have been chatting, right, and we've been talking about you're getting more and more into your tequilas, and, you had just mentioned how, like, the no hangover aspect is what you love the most about tequila. So I figured I got to bring something that's an additive-free Blanco tequila, something that kind of meets that kind of topic and meets that kind of qualification. So we got a relatively new brand over here. It's El Gran Legado de Vida. Now, the brand is relatively new, but it's from one of the most established, renowned, respected distilleries and tequila-making families in Mexico. So it comes from distillery Cascauin, the NOM, and that's, again, for non-tequila people, right? That's a registration number, a specific number on every bottle of tequila that's made to meet the standards required to be called tequila, has a NOM number on the back of the bottle, right? And so the NOM is 1123. If you're a tequila nerd or you're a big enthusiast, everyone knows what 1123 is. 5 or 6 brands that come out of there right now, and this is one of the newer ones. So it's just a great traditional tasting Blanco tequila, and I thought, what better to share with you boys on a nice morning like this and get into it.
Yeah, appreciate it. He's a sober one, so he will not be drinking.
I have seen the light of the moon before, however. I do know a thing or two about tequila.
There we go.
Yes, sir.
And rugby, apparently.
I didn't know that.
Rugby and tequila go together like peanut butter and jelly, my friend.
Well, shows you what the fuck I know.
Yes. If you don't drink alcohol directly after a rugby match, you're not a rugby player.
Okay, well, I am not a rugby player.
This is true.
So the school that I went to in Tennessee had a club rugby team, and typically I would go watch the girls play, and I thought, I would just watch them, and I would get scared. I'm like, these motherfuckers are going to eat me. Just these big-ass females. They're going to kill me.
Man. It is a sport. It's a sport.
I can tell you one thing. I grew up playing sports in Oklahoma, from baseball, track, basketball. I was mediocre at most of them. But I was always impressed by the rugby team because it takes all types of guys on the pitch to play rugby. Like, you have to have the forwards, the big guys that are like little baby elephants. And I've never been more impressed by giant men because they can sit there and go through phase after phase after phase and just get up and slam and get up and slam. And then I'm back here as a winger, and I'm like, I run a 50-yard dash, I'm smoked, So it's just the physicality of the game, the athleticism it takes to play that game. Plus, there's so much complexity to it. If you're not having your head on a swivel, you're gonna get taken out.
I'm sure.
So it's just fun to watch. I was a practice squad guy. I wasn't any type of special rugby player. Let's just be clear. But I got a deep admiration for that game, man. It's a gentleman's game for sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, and I know that you're Nic. You were a former pro golfer. So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, just not quite as physically demanding as rugby.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's in a previous life. In fact, that's what lured me over. South African born and raised, whole family immigrated to Australia when I was just finished high school, and I'd been there for about a year, almost 2 years. And so it's funny. We're just having this conversation with a good buddy who played rugby for Australia last night. He now lives in Dallas, and Australia doesn't have collegiate sport like the U.S. does, right? And so really over there, if you want to pursue sport later on in life, it's turn professional or don't do it, right? And the U.S., I see the U.S. collegiate program as almost kind of that middle ground, right? Where you can still get an education for the most part while you're still improving your sport. You don't have to make that decision like I'm all in on the sport or not. And so I just was not ready to throw all in, turn professional at 18 years old and start trying to make a living from golf. And I wanted to make sure that if golf didn't work out, because I knew the odds are not in your favor, no matter how good you are, I wanted to have some type of education to fall back on. And so I started writing letters to coaches here in the U.S. And here's another part that people normally go like, wait, what the fuck? I had never been to the U.S. until I showed up here for the first day of school in August in 2006. Jesus. So I did all my letters and recruiting and back and forth all via email. They actually signed me my national letter of intent, the NCAA. You got to sign your, like, you know, to come here to SMU. I signed it via DHL and put it back in the mail in Sydney, Australia. And 2 weeks later, I got an email saying, you're accepted. Your first day of school is August 8th. You know, please check into your dorm room at this time. And, you know, came from relatively humble upbringing in that. And flights are super expensive. So bought one ticket, said, kissed mom goodbye at 21 years old. And, you know, hopped on the plane. Eddie Murphy coming to America. Here we come to Dallas.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Nice.
So played college golf at SMU. Played for about 4 years after school. Never had status on the PGA Tour. That was the goal I had. But played all the mini tours. PGA Tour Latin America. Traveled a lot with some guys that I still consider my absolute best friends and wouldn't change it for the world. I got such cool memories and stories from traveling to little towns all over the country, be it Oklahoma, Louisiana, road tripping from here to Salt Lake City for Monday qualifiers. And normally when everyone missed the Monday qualifier, we normally have a fun story the night afterwards in these random towns to kind of remember. And it was great. Did that for almost 4 years. And then saw 30 years old coming up real quick and decided, that's maybe not the best thing. I don't think I'm going to get where I wanted to get on the PGA Tour. And so, made a pivot and went another direction.
So I want to ask you, while you were playing on the PGA Tour, what is some of your most memorable moments while you were out there, and maybe like one of the ones that you cherished the most while you were out there on the tour? So
to understand how it works, right? There's about 125 guys every year that have full status on the PGA Tour. Let's call it like a membership card, right? And so they are basically entitled to play most of the PGA Tour events. Or at least back when I was doing this is how it was set up. Most of the PGA Tour events for the year. At the time, it was called Web.com. It's now Korn Ferry. That is like one tier below. Another 125 guys with full status and a number of guys with partial. But every Monday before a tournament, they would have essentially an open qualifier, right, called a Monday qualifier. And you would have 200 guys playing for 4 spots. And so every week, tournaments are Thursday through Sunday. Every Monday, you'd have 200 guys playing for 4 spots that they would hold open. And so you didn't have to have any status at all. And so we did a lot of that where you would just travel to the town where the tournament was that week. And you go play 18 holes and you tee it up with 200 guys that all try and do the same thing as you. The top 4 or 5 will get a start in the actual tournament that week. And then, of course, once you're in, any type of finish in that tournament would give you some status, right? You would have points towards your ranking and that. And so I never had PGA Tour status. We played a lot of the Mondays. And then there's a lot of feeder tours that sit underneath that Web.com. And a lot of those are, for lack of a better description, organized gambling, right? I mean, the entry fees make up the prize money. The first prize was barely anything to write home about, and basically outside of the top 10 every week, you're losing money for the week after you count in your travel and your accommodation. So you don't play those tours because it's profitable. You play them because you're getting better, you're getting the exposure, you're getting used to being on the road, and you're using that to kind of sharpen your sensors. So when you do play these Mondays, or you go to Q School every year that have one big tournament with multiple stages to try get onto the tour, you'd be prepared. So long-winded kind of explanation. Your question was, what was my fondest memories? So this is gonna sound kind of cheesy, but all the fondest memories have nothing to do with golf. They have nothing to do with like the best round you played or the best tournament finish or whatever you got going on. It was more just the friendships, the people you met through those friendships. I mean, like I got friends that were in my wedding party that I met through golf that are still, godparents to my kids, friends that I've been in their weddings. And these are friends that, you met through golf, you connected through golf. We traveled the country together. Back when you were broke and trying to make it on this tour, you were sharing hotel rooms, or in some cases sharing hotel beds for a night where you had to. And those are the best memories I have, is the people and the times we shared, between that, during that 4-year period. Really made it special.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome.
I think the camaraderie is what I love about sport as well. you know, you get out there and it's like you got to go through some struggles with a team and with the guys, like you said, traveling. You know, you're going to lose some stuff. Things are going to happen. You know, Joe shows up hungover on Saturday. Whatever the case may be, you know, those are the fun things. So I totally agree. Playing sports, it's not necessarily the games, but the moments with the guys, you know, where you achieve something together or for yourself.
So just a second ago, you were talking about like creeping up to 30, like whenever you're going to be 30 years old. Like before you got here, we were all talking about, I forget how it came up in conversation. Oh, I was talking about Chris. Because I was like, Chris, how old are you? Our videographer. And he's like, I'm 47. And I'm like, you're 47? You sure don't look like it. And then Ryan was just like, yeah, well, I forget exactly what you said. Something about like, yeah, you just moved the wrong way and you're down for a week or something like that. I'm just like, well, I'm not there yet. I'm still young. I'm the baby here. I'm the baby of the group.
You know, what was I heard someone make a joke. I think it might have been a comedian or something, but he's like, you know, at a certain age, you go to the doctor and your knee hurts and you're like, well, he's like, well, do this and you do that stretch and you take this. And you're like, okay, so for how long do I need to do that? And he's like, no, that's just what you do now. Like, that's not when you're in your 20s, like do that for 3 weeks and you're good. And like after a certain age, it's like, that's just now your daily routine until you're in the ground. Like there's no, like, and it comes quick, man. You know, I think the biggest, staying on the golf topic, right? The biggest thing for me was there was a certain age, you know, pretty recently where I used to be able to go straight out of the car, run into the first tee, make like 3 air swings, practice swings, and like rip driver as hard as I wanted to off the first tee and let's go without thinking about it. And then probably a couple of years ago, for the first time, I started being like, well, I might need to hit a few balls before, not because I need to practice. Like I just need to get this body moving and lubricated a little bit, because like I'm not just hopping out of the car anymore after. I mean, we were talking about those road trips, right? I'll never forget. I got 2 good buddies, the 3 of us. We're going to go play a Monday qualifier for the web.com event in Salt Lake City, Utah. And we looked at flights and accommodation and everything, and we were like, man, we're just going to road trip it from Dallas. Like, screw it. 3 of us hopped in the Tahoe, drove up there. I think we spent 1 night in Denver, broke up the trip, pulled into Salt Lake City on like the Sunday afternoon, and went to go play 9 holes before the Monday qualifier. And we got out of the car, like driving, I guess we slept in Denver. So from Denver to Salt Lake City, straight through, hopped out of the car, no range was open, made a couple practice swings, and off we went and played 9 holes. I'm like, dude, I wouldn't spend that long in a car. Like, I'm not swinging a golf club for a week now.
Hell no.
But, you know, you're talking about camaraderie, right? We were talking about rugby briefly in that, and I never played rugby at any serious level. The school system in South Africa is like you have to do a little bit of everything, right? It's kind of a British – I went to a all-boys British-style, you know, private school, and you had to play every single sport. Like in every age group, there was like 7 teams at the school. Like if you were absolutely terrible, like, you know, ball hitting you in the head, couldn't catch a golf ball or couldn't catch a rugby ball, you were on like the under 15 F team. And then obviously the guys that were studs were in the A team. But every sport, every age group had all these teams. So it didn't matter if you were a serious athlete or you were just at the school, you had to play a sport in summer and a different sport in winter. And then on the flip side, you might have been the biggest jock playing in the first team for every single sport. You had to take a musical instrument, you had to take a second language, and you had to try out for the choir and the plays. And it's like, it was building that kind of all-roundedness, right? So I never played rugby of any level of competitive, you know, seriousness, but there's so much camaraderie in it. And I think this is so key with a lot of sports today is there's really not a lot of money in rugby, even international rugby and club rugby, more so now than when I was younger. But back then it was most of the guys that played for the Springboks and that had real jobs. Like think about you're representing your country in a sport, but you're an accountant full-time or you're a doctor or you're someone, you know, you have a full-time job. And because of the money aspect not being there, I think it is more, you know, pure from a sport perspective than we see in a lot of sports today. You can go online and look at stories, but you'll see 2 guys like getting a punch up in the rugby match, knock each other out, and then sitting afterwards after the game, they're giving each other a hug and sharing a beer. Like, oh man, it was a pretty good left hook you had, right? It's like, it's still sport for the sake of sport, and it makes me warm and fuzzy inside watching it. It's like still, we don't get that anymore, right? Everyone's got their multi-million-dollar contract on the line, and you know, some guy's not going to be having a beer with you after you break his nose because he's like, you just ruined my, you know, next 3 weeks and that's going to cost me X million dollars. Rugby's still kind of pure for the sake of sport, which is kind of cool to watch.
Very true. That's one of the things I liked about college sports before the NCAA changed the rule where they're going to start paying the players now, because in college it was always a guy would be running down the sideline and then a guy would be coming to tackle him. And in college, he's going to take that guy and try to get an extra 5 yards, you know? And the pros, we're just going to daintily kind of step out of bounds. So
yeah,
nobody
when
touches
the
us.
draft's coming up soon, so I'm going to just sit on the bench for the national championship game or something like that. It's just, I will tell you this from someone who was part of the NCAA for a little while is they've been paying players for a long time. It's just now it's just now legal, and they don't have to hide it anymore.
True.
You know,
Aren't high school players getting paid now too? Is that a thing?
Not to bring up old Ghost, but I'm pretty sure SMU had to pay the penalty.
I'm pretty sure SMU people just got tired of them winning, so they used them as a scapegoat. Everyone was doing it.
Yeah, they did. They got it. They gave them the death penalty. They couldn't be in any kind of bowl games or anything for like 10 years.
I mean, I guess
I totally forgot about
Yeah.
that. There's like a 30 for 30 on that, right?
Yeah, it is. It was so bad that they've never implemented that punishment again because they didn't realize. They thought that it would impact the school for like 5 years in the program, and then they would just come back.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to SMU in 2006, and dude, I could have walked on our football team in 2006 as a golfer. Like, I mean, it was like, what's that guy doing in the weight room? Like, oh, he's like on a full ride. He's a wide receiver. I'm like, what? Like playing football? I mean, this is now. I'll be clear, right? SMU is way better now, and there were some phenomenal players. But as a whole, right, that program took forever to recover from that death penalty.
It's very true. I grew up in Oklahoma, and Oklahoma football was kind of everything because there were no pro sports. So
The Boz.
Unfortunately, I'm a Cowboys fan. You know, I'm a poke. I'm an Oklahoma State guy. I got to tell you. So growing up in Oklahoma, man, it's brutalized being an Oklahoma State fan because we were trash. You know, we had a couple of good seasons when I was young with like Barry Sanders, you know, and Thurman Thomas and guys like that. You know, people forget Thurman kept Barry on the bench for 2 years. You know, so we had two of the great running backs for sure. But yeah, Oklahoma, man, they dominated, and it was almost like a religion in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, truly.
Okay, so I was wondering, what the fuck do you do? Because I know you got your tequila brand, or well, like the Tequila Wanderer.
Yeah.
But, like, what exactly do you, like? Who is Nic? What do you do?
So it might shock you, but you know, tequila influencing and tasting tequilas on Instagram Live, and that is not my full-time gig. It's a fun hobby that gets me to kind of get away from what. But you know, I've been after the golf career, I kind of moved into sales. In the first part was a third-party company that supported the large insurance carriers. And then for the last almost 5 years now, I've been working for the software company, technology company. So we sell enterprise data management solutions to 85 of the Fortune 100, and it's kind of a data management solution that almost any company, no matter how big or small you are, could probably benefit from.
Yeah.
So, quick answer: software sales is the career, is the main gig. Tequila is the passion that I kind of founded about 7 years ago now. At least started the social media thing about 7 years ago now. And so yeah, I mean, I've got good friends that still think that's what I do. So how's the tequila business going? I'm like, you know, it's a hobby, right? Like, you know, I mean,
social media doesn't really show everything, so it's a highlight reel.
You know, I think I've been trying to highlight that aspect of it for a while now on some of the lives and the interviews that I do. Is this, you know, I'm trying to get people to, for lack of a better term, like get your life from the source, you know, through a screen. I'm not going to get all philosophical with you over here before noon while we're sipping on tequila, but you know, I'm a big believer in that. I honestly think I would never replace anything about my childhood ever, and the fact that I missed this whole social media era, I consider a blessing, not a curse, or not just a, you know, an anomaly. I genuinely am grateful that I missed this, and you know, when we had to find shit to do when we were bored, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to meet people. You meet them in person. You know, I joke about this with my wife. I'm like, you know, when I met my wife, it was right at the beginning of the whole dating app thing. I've never been on one. I've barely seen how they work, and I'm so grateful for that. Like back when I was single and before I met my wife, it's like you had to meet someone, you still had to go fucking talk to them. Like, you saw someone you found attractive, you had to actually be a person, right? Where online, everyone can be whoever the fuck they want. Like, I say this, right? On Instagram is, if I'm going to be nice, misleading, or someone's highlight reel, to be honest, it's like straight up intentionally bullshit.
Yeah.
Like if I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, I'm saying you're only showing the good parts, right? But in all honesty, there's a big percentage of social media out there that is intentionally misleading and showing you the opposite. And, anyway, it is what it is, right? But when I founded the social media thing, without knowing this, right, I kind of hit like a little bit of a niche. And so bourbon was kind of big. I did not know that tequila was going to be this category that was just rocketing to the top, right? It was, I think the stat in 2022 last year was, it was the first year ever that tequila outsold whiskey and vodka in the US. I think about that. Like outsold, I mean, I'll tell you from friends that work in the industry, right? Like the big distributors, they'll have people that manage different categories. So they'll have like a VP of agave spirits, they'll have a VP of bourbon, they'll have a VP of scotch, and he manages all those brands. Tito's has their own fucking VP. That gives you an idea of like how much volume that moves, right? Tito's has their own VP that only works around the country, like specifically for Tito's, one brand of vodka. I can't remember the statistic, but I think they sold like 13 million cases or something in 2022. And even with that, agave spirits as a whole outsold bourbon and vodka in the US. So that shows you how it's just, the category is just still trending and still moving up, and no one knows where the top of that mountain is yet. But when I started the Instagram page 7 years ago, right, I didn't know this, and there was no one on social media doing what I'm doing. And so I joke with some of the people who I now consider friends, some of the best tequila makers in the industry, and that I say, when I started this, I couldn't even tag their brands. Like the fifth generation tequila maker had the most renowned, the most respected brands out there that are still legacy brands, made the traditional way, no shortcuts, no additives, just still made the way it was made 100 years ago. I would like find these brands and love them and learn about them, and I couldn't tag them in social media because they didn't even have a social media presence. Excuse me, when I started this almost 7 years ago now. Now, any night of the week, I can hop on Instagram and there's 10 people doing live tastings or reviews or tequila talks or interviews with tequila makers or reviewing tequila brands. But when I first started it, there was just no one doing it on social media, and it kind of blew up pretty quickly because of that, which is, again, kind of cool because I've made some, like golf, I've made a lot of phenomenal friends and built relationships through this kind of mutual love of tequila over the last 7 years. Like friends that I would, if I deleted the Instagram account tomorrow, we'd still be friends and would still be in contact.
Yeah, that's dope, man. Coming back to like dating apps and stuff like that, Courtney, if she can hear me, I don't know if she can. I got my headphones on. I can't tell if she can. Okay, so that's actually how we met, was through Bumble.
There we go.
Yeah, we met through dating app. I was traveling for work, and long story short, we're engaged now. So yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, look, dude, I wasn't, I've got multiple friends that met through dating apps and that type of thing, and I think, kudos to you guys, because I think it's. Oh no,
it's
a minefield. Like, it's so difficult. You luckily found, something genuine, and
yeah,
it's awesome. But
I like the I like it.
There's people that have terrible intentions on there. Let me put it that way.
Too many options is a bad option.
Yeah. So, but no, I what you were saying about like being able to just go out and meet people, 100% agree with you. Yeah. I love the because like what I do with my other podcast, Let's Have a Sip, is like primarily I'm drinking bourbon, whatever. Everything's virtual, so like there's no synergy like we have right now. Like I can actually like. If your internet cut out, I'm like, oh, what'd you say? You know what I'm saying? So we don't have that here. So
I wanted to ask, what do you think changed the trend where tequila just started on that upward trajectory? When do you think that happened, and what maybe caused that?
So, you have to credit the Casamigos effect, right? As much as the purists, the tequila purists and that like hate Casamigos, and it's the celebrity corporate brand, mass produced, yada, yada, yada. I take a different approach, and I differ on a lot of, if you want to call them aficionados, right? These tequila purists, if you go on social media, you'll find a lot of people that do reviews and that'll bash the mass produced, additive heavy, let's be nice and PC, call it Americanized, commercialized brands, right? I take a different approach, right? First of all, I'll say this. I barely have any time to highlight the quality people and brands that I like with full-time job, 3 small boys at home, multiple other things I got going on. Still like to indulge in my golf as a hobby, as something as well. I've always been, even prior to golf, like really been conscious of health and fitness. My dad was a swam for his country, ran ultra marathons. Like from when I was a kid, I grew up and I didn't know any other way other than to be fit, for lack of a better term, without sounding like a douchebag. Like it wasn't an option where when I grew up. And so with all those things that I want to still do, I barely have time to spend time and highlight the great quality brands. I definitely don't have time to get on and do a 45-minute Instagram about how shit some mass-produced brand is and why it's bad and what additives are in there. And so, but if you go on social media, you'll find a ton of people that do, right? And to each their own. There's people that have grown, have a much bigger following than me in the tequila space, and they, will regularly take advantage of the, Casamigos bashing effect, if you want to call it that. I think I was drunk on an Instagram live years back, and I think I coined a term which I love hearing other social media people use now. I'm like, I remember when that term first came out because I said it after about 10 drinks. But I like to think of them as like a gateway tequila. All right, it's a way to get people that aren't tequila drinkers started on their journey. And then the hope is that over the time they will get educated on what is really quality and what isn't. And the only reason I say that is because that's how I found it, right? I was social. You've been in Australia. South Africans and Australians like to drink. They like to be social. And a normal night out, I would be drinking anything and everything, right? Be it beer, rum, cocktails here, champagne there, shots of this, whatever it might be. And the first time I started getting into tequila, it was those gateway brands, right? The Don Julio 1942s, the super sweet vanilla added, vanilla bomb tequilas. But if I had tasted, stuff like we're drinking right now, back then I would have been like, oh, I can't drink this. Like my palate wasn't ready for that. So it was like a gateway to get me started on tequila. And then I went down the rabbit hole, right? Then you start learning about how it's made and what the difference between, an additive-free and traditional production is versus putting it into a giant machine and different quality. I mean, I can go on all day, right? The quality of the agave going in has such a huge impact on it, and that's the start, right? That's the foundation of it. And another thing is like the agave plant can take up to 10 years to fully mature, right? Really, ideally, 7 to 10 years is where you want to harvest it. So think about the planning that goes into producing a quality brand. Like you and I could put a bunch of agave in the ground today with the ambition of making a tequila. That we're 7 years away from our first Blanco. That's like something that isn't aged at all. Now you're going to add, aging and that type of thing. Like it's even further away. So went down that rabbit hole and, your palate kind of develops. But, the key is that if it wasn't for the Casamigos, quote unquote, of the world, I don't think I would have ever really got that interested in it in the first place 7 years ago. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what the Casamigos brands, I would say, glamorized tequila versus other brands, right? You had Clooney and Randy Gerber, and you got Hollywood celebrities, and they created a lifestyle around a brand that people bought into the brand, not the actual juice that was in the bottle. Like people wanted to wear the Casamigos T-shirt, and people saw these lavish parties in Hollywood and after the Oscars and stuff with Casamigos everything, and their friends and network, celebrity network, you'd see them in paparazzi videos, and they've got Casamigos, and people bought into like the lifestyle of Casamigos more so than the juice that was in the bottle, yeah. Right? And I think that kind of started it. And then the financial aspect, right? What else drives everything in the world, right? Money. And so when Casamigos were making the money they were, and especially now when they sold to Diageo for $2.5 billion.
Thank you, Jesus.
Jesus Christ.
$2.5 billion. Like now everyone wants to be the next Casamigos. If I had $1 for every time someone's like reached out to me through the Instagram, been like, hey, I work for an investment firm, or we're looking to invest in a brand. Like, who do you think is going to be the next Casamigos? I'm like, if I knew that, do you think I'd be Like, you think I'd be sharing it with you? I'd be like all in, trying to grab up as much as I could.
Yeah, of all people,
me.
for sure.
Me.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
there we go. So
we will do this.
like so really it's that and a number of things is just kind of and people have a tendency to want something new, right? How many times do you change the cover on your cell phone because you just get tired of the color, right? I think it'll go through its phases. Tequila will have its moment, and then something else will pop up. It'll come back, right? I mean, bourbon will make a comeback in some way. I mean, everything goes like this if you wait long enough, but tequila is definitely on the rise, and the end isn't in sight yet. So it's interesting.
I know you post about this quite a bit on your socials. About Lalo, it's Lalo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Never tried it. Heard really good things. I need to grab a bottle of
that was the other bottle I had in my hand before we came over here. I had this one. I had a bottle of Lalo, and I was
really?
and really I had a few too many Lalos last night, so that was the reason
Okay.
I was like, we'll switch it up a little bit.
So the guy behind that isn't he like the grandson of Don Julio or something like that?
You've been following the Instagram really well.
I have.
So
I'm a fan.
That's a good podcaster right there. He's doing his research
Yeah.
and his background. Yeah, he is. So Lalo himself, Lalo Gonzalez, is the grandson of Don Julio Gonzalez, who was the creator and founder of Don Julio, arguably the first luxury tequila brand, right? He was one of the first people that said tequila is not this shitty well drink, the Jose Cuervos of the world in the American eyes. He goes, we need to go and make sure we market it as a high-end sipping spirit to the U.S., not a well drink that you mix with, sour mix to kill out the taste. And so, again, Don Julio started that way. Of course, when you, like anything, right, when you grow so big, it's very hard to maintain levels of quality and that type of thing. It's like anything in the world. You can either choose quality or quantity. There's very few things that can do both. So Lalo has always been around tequila, and he's always had an ambition to kind of do his own thing. And so Lalo's been around probably for about 2 years now. And it's great. And like living here in Texas, because they have a big influence in Texas. Lalo himself actually moved from Mexico, now lives in Austin. A lot of the people involved with that are based in Austin as well. And so because of the Texas aspect to it, the thing I love about it is like almost everywhere I go into now in Dallas, they have that, right? And before, it's like, oh, they don't have a great tequila selection. What are my options? It's like, oh, Don Julio or Patron, or it's like, I'm terrible, but nothing I was like really excited about. Now I'm pumped. I mean, you go to a hole in the wall. I mean, you go to Inwood Tavern, and like they got Lalo on there now on the back of the bar, and it's great because I can drink those all night. You've got a clean, quality Blanco tequila. I can drink them all night, wake up the next day, as I am here right now.
Ready to party again.
Ready to go after it, get after it again.
Cool.
So whenever you go out for a drink in the town, what spot are you hitting?
Oh, man, I'm getting older and older, and like becoming that like old man who doesn't want to leave his neighborhood anymore. Like I've got friends that they'll hit me up all the time. Hey, we're down here, down the street from where we are right now, and I'm like, it's
but
so far.
I could just sit here in my bed.
I'm like, can we meet halfway at like Highland Park Village? And there's parking, and I could just park and drink and leave, and there's no valet, and there's no line down Henderson, and I'm super old and boring when it comes to that. But there's a few places in Dallas. If my wife and I are going out on like a date night, we want to go get a good bite, but like something with a good tequila menu. Jose and Lovers has a really good, like from a tequila spot, is a really good menu. Trying to think where else,
have we been there, Courtney? Jose's?
Have not.
We have not. Oh, well, I guess we're going.
All right. Well,
there you go. Sorry.
I guess you need to know. You know where you're going next weekend. Then shout out to Jose and Lovers. Yeah.
Yep, there we go.
So, between there and spots in Highland Park Village and a few other places I can mention. Places with good tequila menus but I'm not proud to say that the driving factor for me is convenience of getting there and getting home. Right now, it's
Always.
It's tough when you've got a tequila collection at home that rivals most. Like I would, it's.
Yeah, it's like why go pay money for something that you have at the house?
Well, the worst thing is when I want something at the bar that I have at the house, and you look at the price list and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like really?
Yeah.
I'm like, that bottle cost me $140, and I'm like, you're charging $45 a pour at the restaurant.
That's how I feel about my whiskey whenever I go places. I'm like, what the fuck?
So the goal is just to never look at the price. Like just give them a card and just take it away. I don't want to see it.
Take my money.
Yeah. But Dallas has got a good spot, right? And got some good spots for tequila. And I think we're blessed in Texas if you're a tequila lover. Outside of California, I think a lot of the brands in that as well are like the first places new brands will launch in is California and Texas, probably the two biggest markets for agave spirits right now. So we get lucky enough that we will get access to a lot of the really good stuff and the limited edition stuff and the limited release stuff that you might not get in a lot of other states.
Very cool.
Yeah, no doubt. So I know you got a baptism to go to, so I don't want to keep you too long. But Ryan, you got any other questions?
Do they drink at baptisms?
I don't plan on testing that theory today, but I do have some. I think the life of being a dad is never. You've always got something to do, right? It's which is another reason the whole, added, hangoverless experience of good quality tequila is imperative for me, right? I'm not 20 years old anymore. Like the thing that got me into tequila was being able to go out and have a few drinks and have a good time and still being functional the next day, still being able to get a little workout in, still being able to, to meet your responsibilities as a parent, right? And I think it just kind of all fits in, right? I think tequila needs to be marketed as to the high level, like for people that have got shit to do, right? Like no one, once you get to a certain age, like no one can afford to just write off a day because you don't feel well.
That's a good way. That's a good way of looking at that. I like that. Yeah.
It's like, and even if you don't feel great, like when you're a parent, like tough shit. I always tell my friends, I'm like, dude, they're like, oh, you can't stay out because you've got kids. And I'm like, I can stay out till 5 a.m. if I fucking want. But my day starts at 6, like regardless of what time I come home. So yes. I can stay out till 5. My day still starts at 6. If I go home at midnight, my day starts at 6. So I can do whatever I want until 6. I can stay out all night and I got to be home by 6 because that's when my day starts and I don't get a choice. And it starts fast with 3 boys. There's no like easing into the day.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's like 0 to 100 real quick.
Yeah, Courtney and I don't have kids, but I can only imagine. I know Ryan has a daughter.
I do. I have a 3-year-old little girl, so I understand.
Yeah,
she wakes up, she says, "Daddy, I want to be Elsa."
There you go.
Yes. You're like, just wait for February.
And don't you dare Dallas. Grab the Moana dress. You know what I'm saying? Because that is not gonna fly. Okay. Because I told you, it's like sometimes they just turn into little tyrants, but that's part of the game, man. It's a beautiful thing. I'm happy to be a father, grateful for it.
So let me ask you this then. I got a question for you. So
yes,
how, you said bourbon guy, right? That's where you started.
Mm-hmm.
And so what have you found about, you mentioned you've been like getting into tequila a little bit. You're starting to get a better appreciation for it. What's your experience been over the last, I don't know, call it however long it's been, right?
Probably say like, do you know Naomi Bombardier?
I do know Naomi, yeah. Osadia, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think she's with
She was with Osadia.
Yeah, yes, so I don't think she's with them anymore. But I got connected with her through a local liquor store here in town, and shout out to Lucky Liquor, Scott. He's the man.
What's up, Scott?
Where is that? I don't think I've ever been.
It's on Henderson. It's literally right down here, less than a mile down the road.
All right.
Yeah, it's a small little independently owned store. Cool guy. It's a cool spot. Linked up with her. We did the podcast, got some tequila from her and stuff like that. Tried it. I don't know too much about Osadia, but that kind of was like, I guess, a gateway tequila, if you will, to get into, reposados, anejos, blancos, whatever, all these other finishes. Like I know, I forget exactly what it's called, but there's a tequila that has like a Booker's whiskey finish or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's been good, and I've been slowly kind of getting into mezcal as well, and I'm like, what is wrong with me? What's happening? And it's just crazy, and I'm just like, my palate is starting to like get a little bit more experience, and I'm understanding like what I'm tasting and why do I like it. And if I'm trying something I don't like, I'm trying to understand why I don't like that. I don't want to spend money on something I don't like.
Sure.
But it's been fun, been able to meet some really cool people like yourself, and just kind of go into like local liquor stores and just go into different tastings and stuff like that. It's been super fucking fun, man. So
yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the for the most part, from my understanding, is like bourbon, it can be manipulated a lot, and you've got like a lot of different flavor profiles in that. But the cool thing about agave is that those profiles. Okay, so I don't know how familiar you are with wine, right? But there's a terminology used in wine, in the wine world, where French term terroir, which is refers to how the rainfall of a year and the altitude and the mineral composition of the soil impacts the grapes, which ultimately impacts that year's wine. That's why you have a wine where you're like, wine nerds are like, oh, the 2012 was a really good year, right? Because the rainfall, everything kind of came together. And if you do produce tequila in a traditional way, where you're not adding vanilla and caramel and coloring and glycerin and all the other crap at the end of the process, that terroir is also very apparent. And so there's a brand, Tequila Ocho, one of my absolute favorites, which actually puts a year that they give each tequila a vintage, and they do what they call single estate releases. So all the agave for that particular bottle is from one field of agave. And with other brands, they will pick and choose pieces of a field because they have a taste profile that they would like to keep pretty consistent for years and years and years. Ocho understands that every year is going to be very, very different. And so they harvest the entire field. And so each bottle will have a year that it was harvested and the actual name of the ranch of the field.
Yeah.
And you can take a Blanco from 2021 and you can take a Blanco from the other one in a different field. And the production methods, the crushing of the agave, the cooking, the fermentation, everything is identical. They don't even taste like the same tequila. And that is the terroir coming out. And they actually go as far as putting on the back of the bottle. I remember like a one-off, right? A few years ago, one of the ranches that they released was Los Patos, the ducks. And the reason they called that field Los Patos is because when the ducks migrate through that region of Mexico, they would always come through the field, and for lack of a better term, they'd shit all over the place, and all the duck poop would be everywhere, and it would really fertilize the soil. And it would create a very different taste profile of that tequila versus a field that was at a different altitude, that was a more arid region, that was surrounded by fruit trees, whatever it might be. And so
some shitty tequila, man.
You're just scratching the surface about, when you start getting into the different profiles and that, you'll start noticing that there's a lot of little factors, that little intricacies that can impact it. I was just in Mexico a few weeks back, and I was honored enough to be at Ocho's distillery. And they surprised me and a few other people that were visiting over there. They actually let us help choose the next limited release that's coming out in September this year. They call it Puntas. They bring it out every couple of years.
What'd you call me?
And but the part that blew my mind is, even as much as I've been around tequila, is we had the distillate straight out of the distillery. It's about 70 something proof, right? 70% alcohol proof, yeah. And they basically do the calculations. We've got a water dropper into the glass, 10 millimeters of tequila and a water dropper. And we're doing the math on, it was way too much math after a whole day of drinking for me. But Carlos Camarena, the master distiller, is up there, and he's like, all right, 3 drops of water will get what you've got in your little taster over there to about 55%. You put 3 drops of water in, mix it in, you taste it, and you're like, we're taking tasting notes and everything. And then he's like, well, maybe some people prefer it at like a 53%. So like take 1 more drop of water in there, and you mix it. And the second time, you're getting all these things on the profile that weren't even there before. So it's not just the same tastes, but watered down. It is, now there's pepper, and there's like a minerality on it. And we added a freaking drop of water to 10 mils of tequila. So there's so many little intricacies that a brand that gets mass produced and sells 1 million cases, I love Dwayne Johnson, but like, dude, don't start talking about tequila. Like your small batch, like how do you sell 400,000 cases, or last year 1.2 million cases of small batch?
You know how
it's
big
all
he
marketing.
Is? There's a lot of small stuff.
I wouldn't say it to his face. Don't get me wrong.
What's small to him is big. It's a big
there we
bullet.
go.
Yeah.
Anyway, I will say this. I love it. You reached out. The reason I still do the Instagram thing, and that is kind of what I said about golf, and I'll finish on this, is I got some, cheesy saying I mention all the time on my Instagram lives and whenever I'm speaking and interviewing people, is that the tequila you drink is only as good as the people you drink it with.
Yeah.
And I said, honestly, if Instagram came tomorrow and got deleted off the face of the planet, my life barely changes. Because what I get out of that page and the value that I really love about what I've done for 7 years on that Instagram page is the people, the relationships, and the stuff that happens in getting life from the source. See, I went full circle there, came back to the first topic. It really is, right? That's what makes it, sitting over here with you guys in an actual room, drinking tequila, talking about it, conversations we had before the camera started rolling. That's what it's really about, not what ultimately ends up on the screen.
Yeah.
And so the thing I love about that page is the people and educating. And so the reason I say that is I genuinely get happy when people like you reach out and be like, hey, I've been watching this and I've started getting into tequila. What do you think about this? I'm like, that's badass. I love nothing more when I feature a tequila in a live and I get people blowing me up being like, hey, I saw that at my bar and I tried it and absolutely loved it. Or I didn't like it, right? Everyone's taste is different.
Yeah.
But the people is what it's about. The page is only as good as everyone that engages and follows it. And so it's a tequila page, but it's really the theme of it is people and everyone that comes together around a mutual interest or love or dislike for tequila, whatever brings you there. Everyone's brought there with some mutual factor, and it's all about people.
Yeah. Hashtag drink Mexican, ladies and gentlemen.
Salud. Cheers to that.
So one last thing before we let you go. Ryan, myself, and our team decided to get you a little something.
We got you something.
So
You probably never seen it before.
probably not. So I got you some golf balls.
Have you ever-
Snap.
You probably
Top
never
golf
seen
gift
those.
card,
Dude, you have no idea how badly I need these right now.
a liquid IV, and then some other supplements.
Yes, sir.
Stay hydrated.
This might be the best gift I've got ever, regardless of circumstances. This is amazing. Well, thank you.
Yeah, for
Thank
sure.
you for having me on. Honored
Yep.
to be on the podcast, and I'm excited to see, you guys just knock out more and more episodes of these. And, again, it's thank you, and
Yeah.
drink Mexican where you can. And thanks for bringing me on.
Yeah, for sure. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, y'all have a good one. Peace.
Peace.
Brought to you by Bearded Bastard Barbershop and Legacy Hi-Fi Studios.